Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told how to voice the radio, and if I've timed this right, it should be the release day for Chilling Reign. If I haven't timed it right, then Chilling Reign has just come out. It really depends on if any big news drops on Friday. So with all of that borne in mind, it's probably about time to bring you a buy list, all the cards that you need to buy from Chilling Reign to be properly prepared to play competitively. Now, the usual rules apply. In terms of Vs and VMAXs, I am not going to be suggesting them unless they are kind of staple cards to fit in a bunch of decks. Ice Rider CALYREX VMAX, brilliant card. But you're either going to play that or you're not, so you don't need to go and pick it up now if you're not. Similarly, buy whatever you want. Me, personally, I am super excited about Malamar and Lycanroc, because I can use Malamar to build a Rapid Strike toolbox deck, and Lycanroc to build a Single Strike toolbox deck. Those are the cards that I'm going to be personally building around. But you don't need to go and buy those cards, so they're very much just for me. And as always, ignore me, if you want to. Not entirely, I'd be really sad. But if there's a card I mention that you don't like the look of, don't get it. And if there's a card I don't mention that you do like the look of, go and get it. We are going to do things slightly differently here, however. We are going to look at Rapid Strike and Single Strike Pokemon in their own category, because I don't think they're like other cards. So in terms of Pokemon then, I think you need 2 to 4 copies of FROSLASS, because it's got a really rather nice ability, whereby when you evolve into it, you can attach a water energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. You can reuse this with Scoop Up Net, which is awesome, and yes, I'm fully aware that in the short term we do have Frostmoth. I also know that they aren't the same, and that Frostmoth is going to rotate out a year before FROSLASS. Inteleon really is a card I think you do need 4 copies of. Inteleon has found its way into a bunch of different archetypes over in Japan. Lets you drop 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon every turn. It is seeing a huge amount of play in a huge amount of decks. You are going to want this in some decks sooner or later. Galarian ARTICUNO V, I know is a Pokemon V, but you need 1 to 4 copies of it, because it's got that ridiculous ability that lets you discard 2 cards from your hand and draw a card. For decks that play from the discard, for a little bit of emergency draw, whatever, this is going to be a card that fits into a lot of decks, and I do think you're going to need a couple of them. BANETTE, I think you need 2 to 4 copies of this one, because it's got a really good single energy attack that lets you do 140 damage. Basically, if you're looking for a single energy attack and hit Psychic Weakness in the near future, BANETTE is about the best one you are going to find. CRESSELIA, you will need 4 copies of this if you're going to be playing a Psychic deck at any point in the near future. Because for 1 energy, you search your deck for a Psychic energy and attach, but if it's your first turn going second, you search for free, and then it's got a 2 energy decent attack on a single prize Pokemon. It is just a Psychic version of Volcanion, and Volcanion saw a ridiculous amount of play in fire decks the whole time it was legal. You should expect a similar thing from CRESSELIA. Now, Shadow Rider CALYREX VMAX, I really think you need a couple copies of this one. Even if you never attack with it, the ability lets you attach a Psychic energy to one of your bench Psychic Pokemon and draw 2 cards. Now, admittedly, this won't really work outside of a Psychic deck, so if you're not playing a Psychic deck, you'll probably never need it. But it's so good in any deck that does or can use Psychic Energy that I really do think this is one that you should have a couple copies stashed away, because I think we're all going to be playing this at some point. Galarian Zapdos V, you really need 1 or 2 copies of this. The ability basically reduces your attack cost by a colorless energy for every Pokemon V your opponent has in play. So if your opponent's got 3 Pokemon V down, for a single fighting energy, or an Aurora energy, or anything that counts along those lines, you do 170 damage. It's a phenomenal counter to Eternatus, which, in the format we're just going into, when it was in Japan, was the best deck. I know we got a bunch of Eternatus counters in this set, but it still ended up being the best deck. And we've got Gengar VMAX coming soon, which pretty much takes over as best deck, and this is a phenomenal counter to both of them. You will be playing this card at some point. I think you need a couple copies of Spiritomb here. It's got a really nice attack for a single colorless energy that does 1 damage counter, for each Pokemon in your opponent's discard pile, and then your opponent shuffles all those Pokemon from the discard pile into their deck. It's really good for dropping damage in the late game. It's really good for hurting those decks that want Pokemon in their discard pile, etc. It's one you should be considering. 1 to 2 copies of LIEPARD V, because it's got an ability that just discards a Pokemon tool. And yes, I know we've got Tool Scrapper, but firstly, that's going to rotate out a year before this. Secondly, it is so much easier to search a Pokemon than an item card. Plus, item lock totally exists. And then I think you need 2 copies of Greedent. Now, Greedent is a rather ridiculous card. And it's not one I see being talked about a lot, but I do think it's going to make an impact. Because it's got the ability Brazen Tail that basically says energy attached to your Pokemon cannot be put into your hand, deck, or discard pile by an effect of your opponent's item or supporter card. It just stops your opponent playing cards like Crushing Hammer. It's kind of ridiculous, and it is one that I absolutely think you do need a couple copies of. Although it didn't quite make my top 20 list, which makes me sad. It just fell off, and I am kind of regretting that a little bit. Now, if you want to play a Rapid Strike deck, there are a few other cards you need to consider here. ZEBSTRIKA is kind of ridiculous. Single energy, 120 if any of your Rapid Strike Pokemon attacks the previous turn. Rapid Strike URSHIFU, I think you need 2 to 4 copies of it, because for 2 energy, 1 Rapid Strike energy, you do 30 damage for each of your Rapid Strike Pokemon in play. That's 180 damage, and you're hitting a water weakness here. So that's a card that I think in a Rapid Strike deck is going to be amazing. Zeraora V, if one of your Rapid Strike Pokemon attacked last turn, you do 100 to the active and 160 to the bench, which is kind of awesome. Speaking of hitting the bench, Passimian lets your Rapid Strike Pokemon do an extra 30 to bench GXs and Vs, bearing in mind that yes, it will combo with Telescopic Sight. So now you're doing an extra 60, and it gets out of hand pretty quickly. And then ZANGOOSE, I think you need a couple copies of it. Now, it is for free energy, which is slightly annoying, but if you played a Rapid Strike supporter this turn, and you may not, that one's up to you, you get to do 50 to the active and 50 to 2 bench Pokemon. If you play a Rapid Strike deck in the near future, all those should be considered. In terms of single strike decks, we have the ABOMASNOW. You only need a couple copies of this because it doesn't stack. You can only use 1 at a time. But it does give all of your single strike Pokemon other than ABOMASNOW an extra 50 HP, which seems like you're going to play it at some point. You need 1 to 2 copies of CINDERACE, because for 2 energy, you do 150, but you also do an extra 30 for each prize card your opponent's taken. And frankly, late in the game, your opponent's taken 5 prizes, you use Mustard to just play this. You use Houndoom to accelerate a single strike energy, and then you attach for your turn, and with really not that much investment at all, you end up doing 320 damage on a single prize Pokemon. That's kind of ridiculous. If I'm playing a single strike deck, I'm going to be playing one of these Cinderace. SEVIPER, I'm not as high on, I'll be honest with you, but you may want 1 or 2 copies of this one. SEVIPER, for free energy, does 90 damage, but if you played a single strike supporter, you do 180 instead. That can add up pretty gosh darned quickly, and you're hitting fighting weakness. Speaking of which, single strike URSHIFU. This is another one, and all these you're going to need Houndoom to accelerate energy to get them going fast enough. But if you've got any damage counters on, and you will if you've used Houndoom, 200 damage plus whatever you're adding from single strike energy, tell me that doesn't sound like fun. Again, those ones are single and Rapid Strike Pokemon, so if you're not playing single or Rapid Strike decks, you won't need them. Now, in terms of trainers, remember my rule, I'm a big fan of getting 4 of all trainers, but there are a lot of trainers in this set. You have been warned. So AGATHA, I think you probably need 2 to 4 copies of this one. It lets you move damage counters around. 3 damage counters from your active to your opponent's active. A lot of decks won't want to play this. Some decks will want to play 4. AVERY lets you draw 3 cards while limiting your opponent to 3 bench Pokemon. Any decks where your opponent is really reliant on having a lot of bench Pokemon, this is going to be amazing. But there's also all of those other decks where, how often do you really want to discard 2 bench Pokemon? I'm suggesting not that often. If you play a Rapid Strike deck, Brawly lets you get 3 basic Rapid Strike Pokemon, so this is something you really should be considering, but you might want none of these if you never play Rapid Strike decks. Caitlyn is a new draw card. It's not phenomenal, but it's different to the others. You put cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck and draw to replace them. There are some decks that are going to want to play this. This is a reprint. You might already have it from an old set, but if you don't, consider picking up a playset. Now, we do have then the gloves. So you've got fire-resistant gloves that do 30 more to fire Pokemon. And then you've got justified gloves that let you do 30 more to darkness Pokemon. And then you've got weeding gloves that let you do 30 more to grass Pokemon. And I went slightly out of order. You've got crushing gloves that let you do 30 more to metal Pokemon. And again, I think you need 2 to 4 copies of all of these, because if there is a particular matchup you're expecting to be facing, and an extra 30 damage would be the difference in a KO and not, this is the kind of thing you want to have. Now, Doctor is one of the ones that could be skipped, but then again, in a VMAX heavy format, and we are in a very VMAX heavy format, it can be a straight draw 4. Draw 2 if your opponent's active as a VMAX, draw 2 more. Straight draw 4 is awesome, but it's garbage when you're not against a VMAX deck. Maybe there are enough VMAXs that it's actually going to be worth it. I could see you skipping this one though. DYNA Tree Hill stops both players being healed. It's a stadium card that you may well want to play at some point. I would recommend getting 4 copies of it. Echoing Horn is a great item card. Lets you take one of your opponent's basic Pokemon from their discard and put it onto their bench. This is the kind of thing you are going to want to play in some decks. Go and grab a playset. Expedition Uniform lets you look at the bottom 3 cards of your deck and put them on top of your deck in any order. And then, of course, you can combat that with stuff like Oranguru, or indeed anything that draws cards. And that's kind of cool. So it's an item card that gives you extra consistency. I could see people playing a bunch of this as well. Flannery lets you discard a special energy and a stadium. Control decks are going to want this. Consider getting 2 to 4 copies. Fog Crystal searches either a psychic energy or a basic psychic Pokemon. And to be blunt, if you play any psychic deck between now and rotation, you are going to want a playset of this. Galarian Chestplate reduces all damage taken by 30, as long as you are a Galarian Pokemon. Again, there's a million decks that aren't going to use it, but consider picking up a playset for the ones that do. Honey lets you draw a card for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon V, and again, this is a metagame call. If you think there are a bunch of decks out there that are going to be playing a bunch of Pokemon Vs, this is the kind of card you are going to want to be playing. Karen's Conviction, again, is very much a single strike card, so don't get it if you're never going to play a single strike deck, but if you are, this is a phenomenal card, because you do an extra 20 damage this turn for each prize card your opponent's taken. It's nuts. Clara is a recovery supporter card, lets you put 2 Pokemon and or 2 energy, basic, from your discard pile into your hand, and there are going to be some decks that are going to want to use this, so you should be picking this one up. Melony here is just brilliant in water decks. You attach a water energy from your discard to one of your Pokemon V and draw 3 cards. If you are going to be playing a water deck in the near future that has Pokemon V in, you are going to want to play this card. Old Cemetery puts 2 damage counters on any Pokemon that has energy attached to it that isn't a Psychic Pokemon. And this is good in Psychic decks, and it's good in any deck that doesn't mind the extra damage but really wants their opponent to take it. And then it's good in all of those decks like Fampi that I love that do damage depending on how many damage counters you've got on you. It's going to be in enough decks you're going to want a playset of it. Path to the Peak, however, might be even better. Remember how good Power Plant was and how much play Power Plant saw. Well, this is Power Plant, but instead of turning off the abilities of GXs and EXs, it's any Pokemon with a rule box. So whereas Power Plant stopped being good as Pokemon Vs got bigger, no such luck here. You are going to see a ridiculous amount of this card. You need 4 copies of it. Peonia, you need at least 2, but you may well need more. This is the only option we've really got at the moment for mucking around with our prize cards. pick up 3 prize cards, and then place 3 cards from your hand down as prize cards. No, you don't have to randomize them. Yes, you will know what's in your prizes, or at least half of them. That's a very good thing. Peonia discards your entire hand and searches for up to 2 trainer cards. It's a weird kind of supporter card, but I can absolutely see people playing it. You could go without this one, but I do think you should be considering this. Both of the scrolls, Rapid Strike Scroll of the Skies and Single Strike Scroll of Piercing, I think you need a playset if you're going to play single and Rapid Strike decks, or you could skip it if not. Scroll of the Skies does 10 damage plus 50 more for each energy attached to your opponent's active. Punish them for attaching lots of energy. And Scroll of Piercing does 120 damage, but goes through any effects on the defending Pokemon. Although it doesn't hit for weakness, which is actually kind of sad. Rugged Helmet is another one you could skip, but I still think you should pick up a playset of it. It gets rid of energy when you get attacked. And against some stalling wall decks, this is going to be an absolutely brilliant card. SIEBOLD is only ever going to be good in a Rapid Strike deck, but it does heal 60 damage from 2 Pokemon, so although it is far from an essential card for the vast majority of decks, come on, we can all imagine a Rapid Strike deck that's going to want to heal, can't we? Welcoming Lantern, again, you're only ever going to want in a Single Strike deck, and even then it only recovers Single Strike supporters, not others. So you could go without this one, but I do think it's going to be very good in Single Strike decks. And then we've got the new energy cards, Impact and Spiral Energy, and same deal. If you're going to play Single and Rapid Strike, you need 4 of them, otherwise you need none. Both of them will count as any kind of energy, but Spiral Energy stops you being paralyzed, and Impact Energy stops you being poisoned. If you're playing Single and Rapid Strike decks, and frankly, you probably don't know, we've not seen nearly all of the Single and Rapid Strike Pokemon, then you know what? You're probably gonna need to go for these. And Lucky Energy, I do think you need 4 copies of. When you're active and damaged, even if knocked out, you draw a card. If you're not fussy about the kind of energy you're going to be playing, this is going to help you out massively. So there we go. There's your buy list. Bit longer than usual. Again, I am giving you the kind of, if you want to be set up for any deck, here you go. Go and get your main attackers, and that is all you'll ever need. If you follow my buy list, you will only ever need to buy main attackers, and you'll be good to go. But it's up to you guys. I have shown you the cards. I've told you why they're good, obviously very quickly. We've, gone for a lot of cards here. But it's up to you. Feel free to add any cards I didn't put on, and feel free to skip any cards I have put on. This is essentially my buy list. This is what I am going to be going to pick up from this set. So that's what I'm sharing with you. But as always, agree with me, disagree with me, I don't really mind. But I would like to have a conversation in the comment section. Tell me which cards you would add. Tell me which cards you would take away. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.